In today's deck profile episode, it's the beginning of what I've been testing with Cybersleuth. CS was first introduced in BT22, and while there are quite a few new additions to this archetype in BT23, there are so many varying top ends that by the end of this video, you might start considering it for some of your other mainline builds. Today's focus on the top end is going to be CS Omnimon, but what makes it so different from a traditional Omnimon build, and why could it be better in some ways? Keep in mind, these are just elements that I've been testing with, and you might find something that's better. But rather than make you start from square one, this video will always offer additional knowledge, combos, and a general deck profile for you to start with. Briefly, when you look at Omnimon decks, the general consensus was to get your tamers out quickly, whether it be the Nokia Shiromini that sets you to 3 and can play out Agumon or Gabumon if you have 1 or fewer Digimon, Tai and Matt for draw power, or Tai and Matt for that end of turn attack. But when playing this deck, your focus was only ever trying to get tamers out so that when you had one Digimon stick, you'd slam down one of the BT17 level 6s in order to warp the other, so then you could end of turn DNA attack. Sometimes you might even have Miraculous Mega Knight as a trap, but you still need the tamers to stick on board and then play this card. In playtesting this deck over and over again, when it goes off, yes, you can feasibly win in a single turn. But the problem in today's meta is that you've got 2 turns tops for setup before you better win the game. And because of how the deck operates, Floodgates, while impactful, can only be outed by the BT17 wargreymon because of its on-play effect. Then it got me thinking, are we playing Omnimon the traditional way, and not a way that is outside of the box? Noting that we had the CS engine to contend with, this is where the video starts its deep dive. CS has 3 eggs to work with. The Wanyamon that when effects place CS trait Digimon cards in the Digivolution sources, you may Digivolve into a CS trait Digimon card in the hand with the Digivolution cost reduced by 1. While a very strong effect, this effect is only most useful when utilizing it with the powerful rookies of BT22. Sumemon has a little bit more flexibility in which when any of your Digimon with the unidentified or CS trait are played, you draw 1. This level 2 has already seen significant uses in some Omnimon decks because they also utilize the black Agumon and Gabumons from EX4 and assist with consistency. And then of course, Yokomon for generic card draw when you attack with the CS trait Digimon. Out of all of these eggs, Yokomon was my least favorite to test with. But even then, Sumemon can net us a card when a CS trait Digimon is played. Though honestly, I liked the Wanyamon the most because of the things that you could do, which I'll cover in the combos. Interestingly, BT22 offers 3 of the best rookies for CS decks: the Terriermon, the Palmon, and the Agurumon. All 3 have the same inheritable that lets you tuck the top Digivolution card in order to draw a card. And then combined with the level 2 Wanyamon, you can climb back up into a level 4 for a reduced cost of 1. However, when you downgrade to these level 3s, each one has a specific ability that could be useful. Terriermon, for example, allows you to play any tamer for free, whether it be the 5-cost Nokia Shiromine, or even Ami Aiba. The only caveat here is that you need to have 1 or fewer tamers. Palmon gains you a memory, and Agumon does a DP reduction of 3000 DP. But in a deck like CS Omnimon, your level 3s will also need to account for that Gabumon and Agumon because these pieces are kind of critical. Gabumons can find any card with Omnimon in their text, and a card with the CS trait. And Agumon can recycle your wargreymons, metalgarurumons, and Omnimon himself. One added benefit of cards like Agurumon is that if you need a way to get rid of Floodgates, here it is. But if you choose not to run this level 3, don't worry, the level 4s have you covered. The level 4s also have a wide variety to use at your fingertips, with Gold Numamon being a mandatory 4 for Digivolution cost reduction. While true, it can also be a security tech -2 on your opponent's Digimon, the matter of being able to reduce going into a level 6 can be huge. The only other mandatory 4 for this deck is going to be cards like Agumon because of its ability for Barrier and its innate card draw when it's played or Digivolved into. The Barrier helps cushion you against decks like Royal Knights even if you're at the baseline 15,000 DP on Omnimon. But your last option goes to Gardrumon because this level 4 is the DP reduction that stops your opponent's Floodgates, and considering you could also de-Digivolve if tucked and Digivolved again, it's even more deadly. I had tested the Greymon and Garurumon cards, but they just didn't have the same impact against the meta. Other options you could consider are Geogreymon for an inheritable blocker, Gargomon for extra DP and potentially playing a tamer, or even Gekomon for the source strip. But at the very minimum, my suggestion is Agumon and Gold Numamon. The last of the Digimon that I wanted to discuss are going to be the level 5s. Remember, because of our Digimon, we have the capability to Digivolve into really any color Digimon as long as we meet the CS trait requirement. And of the ones I tested for this particular deck, Edamon is the king of the level 5s. This Digimon provides not just Alliance, but has the ability to play out a Digimon with a play cost of 3 or less, with Chumon, Sukamon, or CS trait from your hand without paying the cost. Considering this could play out Gabumon or Agumon, and the rest of why CS Omnimon could work, comes together. But for your secondary level 5, the best option that I found in testing was Kirinmon. Notably, if this card is trashed from the security, you can inflict an 8,000 DP reduction to your opponent's Digimon for the turn. However, when you Digivolve into this Digimon, by trashing your top security, you may Digivolve into a Digimon with Kentorosmon, Mitamamon, or the CS trait in the hand with the Digivolution cost reduced by 2. There are a wide variety of ways you could also handle the level 5s, whether it be protection from bounce with Lilamon, a float with Shikuamon, or playing a tamer with wargreymon. But the last segment I do want to cover in the discussion points for today's video are the consistency pieces. Yes, you typically have cards like Gabumon to lean on for consistency, but there are a few cards you might want to take a closer look at. Hoodie Net Cafe, for example, draws you a card, and Delay plays a tamer without paying cost. While this could be useful to play out Ami Aibas or Nokia Shiramine to play out Gabumons, it was one card on my list of cards that ultimately didn't make it into the deck. Likewise, Mirai Mikagura is another card that lets you, on play, trash one card in your hand with the CS trait to draw 2. And while it is a 2 for 2, the ultimate consistency card that made it to the main deck was Yugo Kamishiro. This 3-cost white tamer on play reveals the top 3 cards of the deck and adds one card with the CS trait among them to the hand. The rest get bottom decked. Could be a tamer, could be a Digimon. But what makes this card very effective is the fact that your turn, when any of your Digimon or tamers with the CS trait would be played, by returning this tamer to the bottom of the deck, you reduce the play cost by 2. In my playtesting, Yugo's effects can be stacked with multiple copies, meaning with 2 copies you can play Ami Aiba for free. However, what makes this card even better is that if you play a Yugo with another Yugo in play, you can daisy chain them in a sequence that searches for pieces at the expense of 1 memory. And if you don't have Edamon, this is another way for you to play and set up Gabumon for your full combo. Which is where we're headed next. I've already mentioned how I feel that traditional Omnimon feels slower than the meta. Significantly so that you'd hand over anywhere from 3 to 5 memory on average if you don't have the tamers out. But with the real CS Omnimon, it feels like you can turn to Omnimon in even the most ideal conditions, or even set up absolutely disgusting stacks. Referring to our mulligans, the most ideal hand is going to be Terriermon, Goldnumamon, Angemon, Edamon, and Ami Aiba. This is your ultimate sort of hand if you get it. But if you can get any of your BT22 rookies, 2 level 4s, and an Edamon, it's still doable even at 2 memory. You see, with your ideal hand scenario, if you're going first, you Digivolve in a Terriermon in the back, and pass the turn to 2 with Goldnumamon. Now assuming you have the God hand, you can theoretically wipe out almost all of your opponent's security the next turn. Promote out Goldnumamon, and use Terriermon's inheritable effect to tuck Goldnumamon. Here, you can sequence tamers before you Digivolve for a reduced cost. In which case, you could play out a tamer like Ami Aiba. Now you finish the resolution of Wanyomon's effect by Digivolving into the level 4 Digimon with a Digivolution cost reduced by 1. But because Goldnumamon is now in the Digivolution sources, you can Digivolve into the Digimon for an overall 0 memory cost. And now that Ami Aiba is in play, you can Digivolve into a level 5 CS trait Digimon because you have 2 level 4s in the stack. In which case, you go into Edamon for free. Utilizing Edamon's effect, you use it to play out the CS Gabumon, and use its effect to potentially add the remaining pieces that you haven't drawn into. Keep in mind, the current board state has cost you 0 memory. However, if your opponent puts you to 3 memory, you can wipe out all of your opponent's security this turn. Because of Edamon's effect playing Gabumon, this Digimon will gain Reboot and Blocker. You attack with this Digimon in alliance with Gabumon because of Angemon's barrier effect. This will clear 2 security, regardless of the expense of 2 of your security. Digivolving your Edamon into wargreymon now allows you to Digivolve your Gabumon into metalgarurumon without paying its Digivolution cost. And now end of turn with Gabumon's DNA effect, you can DNA the 2 into Omnimon and attack for the trash and unsuspend. In total, this clears 4 checks. Preps your Omnimon for the last trash in game the following turn or the partition. But again, this is the most ideal hand scenario, and assuming you draw all your pieces. Instead, what you'll likely be doing is you'll be Digivolving into your level 6 to keep your opponent's Digimon off the board or block with them. And in certain scenarios, this stack can get very silly. For example, say you didn't have the metalgarurumon in hand, and instead you alliance for 2 checks, and then played out Yugo Kamishiro. On the following turn, you could use Yugo Kamishiro to reduce the play cost of, say, an Agumon that might pull back a card from your trash to use. Now when you tuck Edamon for, say, Kirinmon, you can draw another card before using Ami-Aiba to Digivolve into Wargreymon for cost of 0 because of Wanyamon's inheritable and the reduced 2 Kurumon's effect to warp your Gabumon into metalgarurumon, before the agumon you just played gets warped into another Wargreymon for free. Now you can alliance with the newly Digivolved Wargreymon for 2 checks, one with metalgarurumon, and then Omnimon for game. Or what about this last scenario, in which you Digivolved into Wargreymon because you didn't have the Yugo Kamishiro and gambled on the metalgarurumon draw. Instead, you have a reboot Wargreymon that can block. But what if you lose the Gabumon the following turn? There are a few scenarios here to also consider. You can downgrade the Wargreymon to a level 5 by tucking it to the bottom of the stack, and then use the Wanyamon to Digivolve into metalgarurumon for a bounce for 2 memory. Then, since you still have Ami-Aiba, you can now Digivolve traditionally into Omnimon for free with Ami's effect. And now with both level 6s, you get maximum value of this Omnimon. But in some test games, you can be more cheeky by the fact that if your opponent doesn't deal with the Gabumon at all, and you draw into a second Wargreymon, you can tuck the top Wargreymon, Digivolve into a new Wargreymon, to warp the Gabumon into metalgarurumon. And the reasoning for this is that you can now create an Omnimon that doesn't trash just 1 security on attack, but 2. Going to the deck profile now, I have been finding enjoyment with the CS Omnimon variant for the fact that it maintains some of the traditions of stack building and not playing things outright. And remember, this list isn't perfect, but gives you a few avenues to consider. Wanyamon of course being the choice for this deck because we can Digivolve for reduced costs and make some climbs very cheap. I see the potential of Sumemon, but not in this particular build. For your level 3s, of course I maxed out on Palmon since it provides memory, and Terriermons can't always play Tamers. At 4 copies it loses value over time. Hagurumon also wasn't as important because there aren't too many floodgate options to deal with at this instant, and I want to save room for Gabumon and Agumons. Because I draw so much in this deck, Agumons aren't as important as the Gabumons, in which case if you go Yugo into Gabumon, the total cost there is 3 memory, 1 memory, and then 1 memory, or even just 1 and 1 if the Yugo was hit in security the previous turn. For the level 4s, we max out on Gold Numemons, Angemons, and Gardramons. I don't really see the need to play out any of the other level 4s, but if you find more success with them, do comment on this video and let me know your findings. And for the level 5s, you know it's just 4 copies of Edamon and 4 copies of Kirinmon. I didn't find any success with the Rise Greymons since we're capped to the 1 or fewer Tamers. And while Shikuamon's float is nice, it doesn't do much for my end goal of getting into Omnimon. And because we're on Omnimon, we need to max out on the copies of Wargreymon and metalgarurumon, because these can daisy chain into multiple 6s should you have multiple level 3s in play. You could mix the other ones in here, but I chose not to for the fact that they are not CS trait and we're locked out of Digivolving with them. As for Omnimons, I'm on 2 CS Omnimons and 1 Ace variant, because like I said, sometimes you can't go the full chain, but leaving a trap up might deter your opponent from attacking. While true, your opponent could DP reduce your Digimon, having multiple Gardramons can also help your stack. And though you could run option cards for your deck, I ultimately chose not to because Omnimon is a piece collecting deck that goes to 7 instead of 6, which makes it harder to make sure you have everything if you're only ever drawing 1 with the Hoodie Cafe option card. Instead, we just have all Tamers for the remainder of the deck, utilizing the standard 2 Nokias as options to build out our stacks, Ami-Ibis for cheating to next level, and then of course 3 Yugo Kamashiros for filtering through the deck. I did have this originally at 4, but ultimately decided to drop a copy for the 4th Gardramon. Overall, CS Omnimon feels a lot better to me in playtesting than the traditional Omnimon build, and in doing so this prompted me to start exploring CS and not just what Omnimon decks could do, but others as well. Let me know your thoughts on this particular deck profile, what changes you'd recommend, and I'll catch you on another Cyber Sleuth variant this week. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.